Hello, everybody. I am Nicole van der Hoeven. Welcome to the stream. And today I have a friend with me. You may already know of him from the title and the description, but this is Zsolt Vizcain. Zsolt, thank you for being here. I'm so happy you could come.
Yeah, hey Nicole, thanks for the opportunity. So it's really cool to have a discussion. Also wanted to have a chat with you, and having it in public is even better.
Yeah, we already spoke, and I thought afterwards, like, we should have just streamed it then. Because you said some things I thought, oh, that was really good. I wish that more people than just me had heard it. So
Cool.
I've been following your YouTube channel for a while actually. I found it because I wanted to know more about Excalidraw and later Excalibrain. But then, so that's what I came for, but I stayed for also just the general philosophy that you had. Before we get into that though, tell us about yourself. Who are you? How did you come to even be here in the PKM space?
Yeah, so I guess I start with how I came to the public PKM space, and it has to do with COVID. And it was simply that during COVID, our company decided to give a bit of extra leave, unpaid leave, unfortunately, but still it was additional days. And I was scratching my head, what the heck do I do in my free time? And so I started to play around with just being more public and open with my ideas. And so that was about 2 years ago as I came in that sense to the PKM world. But in other terms, I actually did my PhD back end of 90s, that is, on a topic that was related to quality management systems and how you handle documentations for quality management systems and that whole topic. And so somehow out of that research and out of that whole experience, I bumped into the brain, which I used for about 2 decades. And
Oh, wow.
the
2
whole,
decades.
yeah, so and the whole long list of stuff that I read and researched myself, and so PKN has fascinated me always.
Yeah, so what is it about the brain that made you want to use it for 2 decades? I mean, in tech, in the world of software, that's a pretty big commitment.
Well,
I've
I mean,
never used it myself.
you don't make the commitment up front. You kind of
That's
just
true.
just keep using it. So funny enough, or maybe not. So it does answer the question why I created Excalibrain, because that was
Yeah.
the link that was missing for me in Obsidian and the other tools. The I think the still the best graph representation of a knowledge base is in the brain. It is just extremely intuitive and handy. The only problem with the brain is it's a closed system. You cannot, I mean, you can hack around it, and I did, but you don't have the ecosystem of
Mm.
plugins. And as such, I think they've created themselves a bit of a competitive disadvantage. Had they plugins, I would probably have developed Excalidraw plugin in the brain, because I mean that was the core reason for moving on. I always struggled with getting my visual notes in and wanted to solve that problem.
So obviously you come from a tech background because not just anybody thinks, oh, I have nothing to do in the pandemic. Let me create a plugin that turns out to be extremely popular. I really like that because it reminds me of Brandon Sanderson. He's a fantasy author, and during the pandemic, he created 5 books. No big deal. So you're one of those people,
Yeah,
productive under pressure.
Sanderson. Yeah, so indeed.
Oh, awesome. So, why you're saying, and I'm very surprised to hear you say it, that you think the brain has the best visualization. So, you've already said that Obsidian's appeal, in part at least for you, has been the plugin ecosystem and the fact that you can create extensions for it or plugins for it. Is there anything else that drew you to Obsidian? Because I also happen to know that you had created Excalidraw for Rome research.
Well, so just to put things straight, the Excalidraw itself is a
Yeah.
public or an open source project, and there's a team of guys and girls developing Excalidraw, and they're doing a fantastic job. So I'm not writing Excalidraw per se. I have contributed with some stuff. So sometimes when I'm not able to do something in the plugin, then I go and build it in the core Excalidraw package. But what I did was integrate it into Rome, yes, and then into Obsidian. And at the
So
time,
why did you make the switch from the brain to Rome and then Rome to Obsidian?
yeah, so I've felt the limitations of the brain for years, and I had different attempts of building a more visual tool for myself. And again, this takes me back to the time when I had a bit more days on my hand to work with because of COVID and because of some additional leave days. And so I started to research. I first found TiddlyWiki, which, by the way, is also an awesome tool.
Yes, that's what I started with.
And interestingly, people talk about all these other note-taking tools, and there are some, I think, powerful ones like Tiddly, which is completely free and amazingly extensible, as well as the Brain, which I is still running strong. They're, I think, on Brain 13 now. They also implemented a whole bunch of Markdown features to catch up with the competition. So, but these tools don't get mentioned. But anyway, so I had time on my hand, and I was looking and reading about PKM tools, and there were two on my short list. One was Obsidian, the other was Rome. But at the time, Obsidian was still in a very early stage, so I concluded that I will go with Rome. I like the simplicity of the interface, and so I used Rome for almost a year, but it's like with every relationship. At first, it's everything is nice and beautiful, and then you start to see the
Then you move in with them and they never pick up their socks.
yeah, exactly. So eventually, I decided that Obsidian was more fit for my needs. And
Awesome. Just some comments here. Hello to Hirofumi from Japan. That's awesome. Benjamin Covington wants to say to you that he has a friend who used the brain for a while and was excited to be able to show them Excalibrain in Obsidian, which they already used. And then Dutch Dragon Sir said, Excalidraw was originally supposed to be for Rome. Dang, didn't know that. Well, Excalidraw, I think this might have been before you explained. Excalidraw is actually a separate service already. What Zsolt did was to incorporate it, integrate it into both Rome and Obsidian. But yeah, it's surprising that I think it really gained way more popularity in Obsidian than anywhere else. And somebody from India as well. So Asians are representing. Awesome. Okay, let's talk methodology because I'm very curious about yours. You've gone through a bunch of different systems. I guess my first real PKM was using TiddlyWiki. I used that for maybe 10 years or so. And I used it mainly because it installs, like, you can have it, it's an HTML page. So you can just have it on a flash drive. I was a consultant at the time. I wasn't allowed to install applications on corporate computers. And that's why that was the one that was perfect for me at the time. So yeah, that's awesome. But you were talking about tools, but what about methodologies? Like, you on your YouTube channel, and your blog, you've talked about progressive summarization, which is from Tiago Forte. You've done how to take smart notes, which is more along the lines of the Zettelkasten. Is there one that you would say that you are inspired by or follow?
Good question. So I think GTD is also a methodology, getting things done. And a very large part of my note taking is for work. So we didn't talk about that, but I work in IT as a CIO for a fairly large IT organization or business organization, and of course IT is considerable as well. And my life is meetings. We run
I hear you.
parallel. I have lots of one-on-one and project meetings. We have lots of interaction in that sense, and I mean, on bad days, it's half-hour meetings from something like 8 or 7:30 until 5, and that means 16, 17 meetings, one after the other. It's impossible to remember what you discussed in the morning. So you really feel at the end of the day that's that was a different
Yeah.
date and time. So my note taking is very much around meeting notes and action tracking. I'm also not very good at remembering people's or remembering examples during performance reviews. So that's also for me an important thing to just note down. If there's an example I want to follow up on later on, then I have a note of that. And so that's a big part of my note taking, and that's all built around the idea of GTD. And then in terms of PKM, it's actually now changing, and that's recently I've been posting these videos, which are just thinking in public type of items about rethinking my PKM. So for many years, I was a daily note-centric note taker. So I actually used my daily note as the backbone of all my note taking, and then I connected things to that, and I didn't really follow anything like Zettelkasten or building a second brain or any of these methodologies. It was just simply, if something interests me, then I took a note, I linked it to my daily notes page, and then I branched out from those notes and a graph appeared. But yeah, I mean, nowadays I very much enjoy the two examples you mentioned. I think are very powerful. So progressive summarization takes a bit of time, but I get so much more out of the stuff I read doing summaries. That's why I started to do the book on a page videos as well, because it just helps me understand it so much deeper. Maybe it's useful for others as well, but for me, it's definitely useful. And Zettelkasten, I've tried it a couple of times. I love the idea. I still struggle with the practice. So yeah, that's a different.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I'm going to put a link to one of Zsolt's videos. This is the How to Take Smart Notes. It's like a book on a page, and it is a great example of how to use Excalidraw to aggregate information, to summarize an entire book. I can't even imagine how long that took. That's like the opposite of sketchnoting when you're just doing it as someone is speaking. This is like when you're using visuals to aggregate something, I think that takes a lot of time. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah. So frankly, the actual visuals, not that
No,
not
the
that, not
thinking.
that long. But I also have a book on a page summary of Tiago's new book, Building a Second Brain, and I also have 2 follow-up videos on that, which are a full recording of the process how I create. Of course, there's no recording when I was reading the book, so that would be a bit boring sitting in a chair. But
Live stream on Twitch.
indeed, I don't think I'm that popular, but in terms of going through my exported highlights and literature notes, book highlights and doing my own highlights, adding my visuals to it, and then compiling the book on a page. So that's all available and I also recorded the hours. So building a second brain took me about 10 hours from the point of having the notes. How to take smart notes was much harder.
Mm-hmm.
It was at least triple, if
It's
not more.
really dense. I love that book. I'm still processing my textual notes on it because there was just a lot of information.
Yeah,
I think the reading part is the part that takes the least amount of time.
actually, it is a deceptive book in the sense
Yeah.
that it's a very easy read. I read it 2 years
Yes.
ago once, and I started as Zettelkasten then, but then I didn't get, or I used some of the practices, but it didn't really build into
Mm-hmm.
a Zettelkasten at the time. But then I reread it, and then so I mean, it's deceptive because it's easy to read. You turn the pages; it's very accessible in its language, but then it has many layers of ideas and content, and it's a very valid.
Yeah. So there's also just a few comments. Hello, Benjamin and Bruce from Austin. And also, Adam says, 2 of my favorite people live together. That's awesome. Thanks, Adam. But since you're talking about your book on a page, I wonder if you might be able to show it for some people who haven't seen your video yet, just as a way to talk about Excalidraw, what it is.
Yeah, for sure. So
I think Excalidraw. I know you said that it was a separate service, but I never actually used it until you integrated it into Obsidian, because that's the thing that's important for me. I'm sharing your screen. I hope that's okay.
yeah, that's okay. Yeah, so this is the how to take smart notes book on a page, and yeah, I mean, I will. It's an hour in itself if you watch the video, and that was already a cut version, so I won't walk you through on the entire content. But yeah, the idea is to pull together a book on a page that summarizes the key ideas, and then in some places, and I think those are the cool integrations that I really love about this. In some places, I have links that will take me further in the discussion. So, for example, here this is a link. So this idea here is. I found this actually a very enlightening idea. That's why it has this light bulb. That there's many memorization techniques, and there's all sorts of things about how can we remember everything. And Zönke makes a very strong point that actually remembering everything leads to paralysis, and forgetting is a skill that you need to develop. But here, what I want to show you is within or from here, I can navigate to my note. Actually, no, I cannot because this is broken. That's That's an interesting piece. Or no, I just created this. I never created my ZL custom for this. So that's an example that is actually, well, we can also create it now, and that's also a good one. So I just marked this for myself as I was reading the book, but I can here create a markdown document. And from now on, I can also add my permanent note template. And so this is my simple ZL custom permanent note template. And so from now on, if we navigate back, then on this book on a page, you will see this link is actually there, and I can, there you go. Okay, so
this is the coolest part of Excalidraw for me. The fact that now, because the reason that I've been shying away from visuals is that once it's a picture, it's then difficult to search for unless you have a way to, like, maybe that with a file name, sometimes you can be very descriptive. But what I love about Excalidraw is that all the text that you type there are actually searchable, because it all becomes a markdown file in the end, and it has like the links like you had that make it feel really integrated to Obsidian rather than like just a separate way to create graphics.
Absolutely.
I also wanted to mention that Zsolt is showing here this book on a page summary, but if you want the high resolution version, he does have it on his Ko-fi page, which I have just linked. Here it is at the bottom there. And you can go there to support Zsolt. Buy him a coffee because he's thirsty.
Yeah. So I just wanted to show here this is a feature that will come out tomorrow. And
ooh,
a bit of explanation, but a sneak peek. So what I want to show you is here, if I, what do I need here? I want a group link. If I click on this link and I get back to my, let's just close this and let's navigate to my, oh, come on. I want to open this in a, I'm not. So this is what I wanted to show you, how now I can link a part of the image. So from now on, if I click on this image right here, it will take me to this document, highlight the part of the document from where I picked it up. So now you can embed parts of your image into your work, and I think it has just so many opportunities in terms of breaking a picture down into parts like this.
Yeah, that is really awesome. That also means that if you have images from different sources, you can just pull them in individually, kind of like reminds me of advanced slides actually, but that's for slides in a presentation way. That's really awesome. Is this available? Well, will it be available on Obsidian Brat first, or is the full public release?
It's going to be part of 1.7.14 is the upcoming version. So yeah, it has a bit of it seems I cannot build anything that's simple. So this has lots of options and requires a license to fly it, but actually this is a very, very neat feature, I think, that will, I think, have lots of good use.
I feel like you're underselling it a little bit. There's lots of people in the chat that are really liking it as well. Everyone's saying that it really looks amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the feature is just amazing. Also, the book on the page, I love this, and
yeah. Also, Adam says, I use Excalidraw for reference boards for my art projects. This will let me pull out specific elements for the project note page. Yeah. So is this right? The badger's asking, so now we can link to the entire image or just a portion? I
Or the
think just a portion, right?
Yeah, so exactly, and I'm not sure if it was the Badger or someone else. So this was a request half a year ago, um, and I've been thinking about how to solve it, and then um, I realized that it's actually not that difficult. So it was more difficult than I thought, but still.
So you realize you just committed to releasing this tomorrow.
No, I'm ready. All I'm doing is I'm trying
Okay.
to put together a bit of an explanation video to how to use it. So that's the only remaining part, which, by the way, is a very important part. I was chatting to a friend yesterday, and he mentioned this idea, which I really love, that publishing your work improves the quality of what you're doing at least.
Absolutely.
And so for me, there's two fundamental reasons for publishing the videos on Excalidraw, of course, to help other people understand what it does, and I do realize that there's lots of features, so it needs a bit of help. But also, every time I do these videos, this is my, say, UAT process, because
Yes.
as I walk through that, that's a very different way of playing with the tool than when you're testing it on your own. You're trying to play through an end-to-end workflow, and that's when all the hidden bugs come out. And so I found this as an important part of just being able to publish more quality.
Yeah. Just for those, I totally understand you. Like this is something we've talked about before too. UAT is user acceptance testing for other people. I totally agree, Zolt, because especially when you put a video out under your own name, like I mean, everyone can put a comment on a video or something, right? Any troll can do that. But when you have a video out, you're linking your name to it, your face, and potentially like you're linking that to your public persona. We both have day jobs, and that don't involve Obsidian. At least that's not our responsibility. And yeah, I really appreciate that you're so transparent about it. But also, I wanted to ask about, actually, Benjamin Covington asked about Excalidraw scripts because it's so funny. It's like an extension for an extension. So Excalidraw for Obsidian is an extension, but within Excalidraw, you also have this script library, I guess. So not fully extensions, but like a collection of useful scripts. Is that right?
Yes, yes. So and unfortunately now this looks a bit different. So for everyone, this is Obsidian 16. So the front end is slightly different. Also, some reason that I struggle with things, because now we have tabs, which is awesome, but but I'm still learning my way through it. So now what you will see is that the whole page header has disappeared. You can put it back in settings, but it's a bit yeah, I can show you how it would look if I put that back. Show view header, and then you can still have the old buttons up there. But without that, now you need to right click on the tab, or you will need to right click in the future on the tab, and that's where you find the Excalidraw script install window. And so this brings up this page with a whole bunch of scripts, and there are some new requests as well, and also some public contributions. And by the way, I absolutely welcome anyone publishing an additional script. You can do it on GitHub if there's something you want to do. And these scripts are just practical little automation. So let me show you some of the scripts. I have this Obsidian menu here, and if you install scripts, then they will appear here. You can also have local scripts like this. So that's also a possibility. And some of the scripts I use frequently, for example, I like this script. So this is select elements of type. So say you have a drawing and you have different objects on it, whatever, and I just want to recolor the arrows. That is pretty, and of course, if you have a large drawing, actually formatting the arrows or lines is a frequent problem that I come across. I simply select everything and I click here to select elements of type and I choose arrow. And with that, my selection only includes arrows, and I can go ahead and format my arrows to whatever color I want. So that is a script I frequently use. Or here's another script which I use for my mind maps. And so you draw a couple of lines like this, and of course you have a mind map around it. And if I click this line, then it just makes it a bit more organic looking. Or if you like the thing Bison, or I'm not sure I'm pronouncing the name Tony Bison correctly, but he has these more organic looking mind maps, and so this is another script that is extremely practical. Then very useful script, just to show you maybe two more. One is if I type a list, so list item 2, item 3, whatever. So I'm just creating a list here. And if I now want to break this up into parts, I can click on split text by lines. And from then on, this is now
Oh, nice. I didn't know about that one.
individual parts. Now, also, you sometimes have a piece of text and you want to add it to a sticky note, but you already have the text. Of course, you can do this now. Excalidraw also has this out of the box, because you can draw the box and you can click on the text, and if you right click, you can click bind to container, and that's good. Another way to do it is here I have this convert selected text elements to sticky notes, and then this becomes a sticky note. Now the difference is, this was a long conversation for me with the Excalidraw team. I couldn't convince them. Unfortunately, now the sticky notes work such that if I change the color, the text and the line around it changes. And I frequently want text elements that don't actually have a line around them, because I just want this to word wrap, but I don't want this to look like a sticky note. So here, if we come back here, these texts are all like that. I don't have a box around the text, and with this script, I can just simply convert a piece of text, and it will automatically be without line around it. Now, there are ways around it, of course, and but yeah. So anyway, so these scripts are, I think, just a fun way of extending the capabilities of Excalidraw with all sorts of useful features.
So they're kind of like macros, right? Because these are not adding new functionality necessarily to Excalidraw. They're just making things that you do a lot easier to get to.
Yeah. Yes.
Benjamin Covington has a follow-up question on this. Is there a community space for Excalidraw script development?
Yes, absolutely. So if we go on, so I think actually here, if I go to the script library, then here's the attention developers and hobby hackers. And so here you find everything where to, so I have some documentation. It's not perfect, but you can always ask me on GitHub and you can look at the examples and you'll find your way. But I do have a page with documentation around the scripts, and you can open a pull request on GitHub to publish a script if you've created one. So yes, absolutely, there's a public space for anyone to contribute. And I think there's
Great.
plenty of material to learn from, because these scripts are actually all markdown files. So just as a last bit on the script,
Oh,
if we go to here, so here are your downloaded scripts. By the way, you can also easily modify them, but if you click on a script, then you can read the code. I mean, we will not go through the code, but it's some of the code is longer, some of the code, like, I don't know, I think the set grid, this is an extremely simple code, or maybe our definition of extremely simple differs when it comes to code, but this is really not a difficult one, and a very useful script, by the way. So one that I also frequently use, because I like the grid lines, but I'm frequently, so if I turn on the grid lines, you see it's a given size, but if I want a different grid, I can also say I want a grid of 100. And from then on, I have my grid of 100, which is very useful when you want to draw bigger objects or whatever.
now is there a space for people to talk to each other? I think Dutch Dragonser was asking, like, for a way to communicate with other maybe Excalidraw plugin or Excalidraw script developers.
So again, on GitHub, I have the discussions enabled. So if you go on the Excalidraw GitHub, we can navigate there as well, but then I need to stop sharing and reshare.
No, it's okay. I did send the link to the GitHub repo for it. It's right here.
So there's a discussion. To be absolutely honest, I watch the issues on a daily basis, and I try to be very responsive on issues. The discussions I frequently forget to look at for sometimes weeks, and then try to catch up. So I'm not that good there. If you have a quick question, you can always ping me on OMG, so on Discord or on Twitter, and those are the forums where I'm more easy to connect with.
How dare you not be able to support this free plugin that you're releasing to the community? Totally understandable. But can we move to Excalibrain? Because that's the one that is newer. And also, I feel I've told you this before, but I feel like I understand how to use Excalibrain because it's I think not too difficult to follow the steps and understand how it works. It's another thing to really incorporate it into your workflow, because I've watched some of your videos, all of your videos on it, and you're talking about how it's changed the way that you take notes.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a bit about that and how that happened?
Yeah, so this is Excalibrain, and let's just maybe is this a good one, or we can go to, maybe this is a better starting place to get a bit of, is this readable size? I mean, it's
could be a bit bigger still if possible.
Yeah, so it's a bit of
that's better, yeah.
A challenge. So Excalibrain is a visualization, and let me just close these other tabs, and then they don't get confused with the many tabs. Normally, I don't have Excalibrain in a tab, but I have it in a separate pop-out window. But if I do that, then I cannot share my windows in the call. So for that reason, we are now stuck with this setup. So Excalibrain is a graph representation generated from your notes in a way that it takes the different data view fields and relationships between your nodes, relationships meaning forward links or back links or pages pointing at each other, and creates this graph layout where on top you see the parents of a node, on the bottom, you see the children of the node. So this is, say, a hierarchical view. And then to the side, you see the lateral items. And those are related to, but are not in this parent-child relationship. Now, what you consider a parent and what you consider as a child is absolutely up to you. So, and I don't think there are some hard, fast rules here. In Hard to Take Smart Notes and with Zettelkasten, I think there is this idea that your line of thought should be sort of a tree hierarchy. There, one idea builds on another, and then you have cross links to other parts of your Zettelkasten notes, and those are the lateral links. So that could be one definition, but really there is no good or bad answer. And that's actually the power of Excalibrain, that you can dynamically reconfigure how this view looks. Also, if you want, you can show the more distant relatives. And in this case, yeah, you can see that there's a whole bunch of additional nodes that I can dive into, which are in some way related. Actually, the key relation is the brain import. So that's, in this case, a bit of a misleading view. By the way, you can also see that I have my tag hierarchy here as well, which I think is interesting. But then if I navigate, you can see that each of the nodes show me how many other parents or children they have. So I can see how noisy or how detailed a follow-up thought is. And so, for example, if I click on this, what is the most efficient way to organize information in a personal knowledge management system, then I had some notes on this the first time I was reading Zenke's book, June of 2020. And then I have some other notes here, for example, decomposing items into MISI responses. And MISI stands for mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. And this is an analysis approach. I read this, in another book. I wonder if I will navigate from, probably if I click MISI, then I will see the book. Yeah, so I took this from Succeeding as a Management Consultant. I was reading that book. That's where I found MISI. By the way, you can see a cool feature of Excalibrain here in terms of, which I think is more than what you get with Obsidian. MISI, this page doesn't exist in my graph. This is simply referenced in my notes on this book. So to make my point was a training I went to, and so this is the notes from that training, and there was mention of MISI about how you do presentations, and then I have this topic right here, and because all of them reference MISI, and actually in this case, in the compose questions into MISI, you can see that MISI is listed as one of the parents. That's why in Excalibrain, MISI was up here as a parent, but it's a yet to be created node. And for me, this is at the heart of how Excalibrain has changed my thinking about links, because yes, I was adding links to my notes, but I was not very mindful about explaining what a link does. And so right now, most of these links, as you can see, don't have a description, but recently I started to be much more mindful about adding an ontology to my links, so explaining the relationship, and then that's displayed here, that and you can see that these are the more more recent notes. So in my How to Take Smart Notes, literature notes, I created a permanent note that is this right here. And so I have this link, which is a type permanent note. I think if I come here, yeah, I mean, because this is a book, this has lots of connections, but this is a different way of navigating your graph. And for me, because it doesn't show the entire graph, you can see that I typically use this without showing the siblings, because I find that this is already too busy. I have a very large monitor, so I can, if I'm not in a call like this, I can still read it. But for me, this is already too much detail. I like the more focused view, and again, this is a bit more on the heavy side in terms of number of connections to this topic. But yeah, this document is my literature notes that then was worked into. So these are my highlights and my notes around it. Some of them I did in Kindle. So by the way, this is a cool use of the call out feature in Obsidian, that you can add your notes next to the literature notes, and it all becomes this nice document. But so this has lots of links, and that's why this Excalidraw page is pretty busy here.
Okay, so
But again, you can see the different type of relations of, here I have some sources and some things based on this is linking to an author. So it does give you a bit of more sense on the relationships.
okay, so in some ways, I think like Excalidraw was about being able to visualize things, but also in some way, also about making those visuals, turning those visuals into a text-based form so that they can be searched. That's one of the cool things about it. In a lot of ways, I feel like Excalibrain is kind of the opposite. It's about visualizing the text that already exists. And like you already mentioned, the Obsidian Graph plugin, my problem with it is that I have a lot of notes. In my main vault, I think I'm up to 6,500 now, and that's one vault out of many. And so for me, the Obsidian graph view is so busy as to no longer be useful. And I need more filters than really they have right now, which is totally fine. But I've actually switched over to using Excalibrain for that purpose as well. Just because, like you said, I can control how many steps, it's almost like degrees of separation, how many degrees of separation I want to see, but also like I can decide whether or not to add the tags in. And I know you were showing about, it shows notes that don't even exist, and I really like that it highlights like, hey, if I have a lot of notes linking to something and that something doesn't exist, maybe that's a clue for me that that's a hole in my knowledge in my system that I should think about filling. But also, I wanted to say for other people as well that you don't even have to do anything to have Excalibrain. Like what Zsolt was showing was not something that he created just for that view. Like those are his real notes. Like without any parameters or something, it still uses some conditions for determining what is a parent or what is a sibling or what is a child, right? So my question to you, Zsolt, is what would you get? What would you miss out on if you don't have any of the richer relationships that you talked about? Can it be used just on that level, like install Excalibrain and explore your vault?
Yeah, so I think out of the box, the logic it follows is simple. If there's a link and my dashed line, so you can configure this to your heart's desire. Like everything else I do, everything is configurable to the nth degree. So you can format this pretty detailed, but the point is, if there's a link from a document to another document, so there's a forward link, that becomes the child. If the document is referenced in another document as a forward link, so in this case, here it's the workflow, not the talent, that distinguishes top performers, has a reference mentioning my literature notes here. So then this becomes a parent, because this is a, from this notes perspective, the yellow notes perspective, this is a backlink, and backlinks are parents. And then if you have a handshake between two notes, meaning the parent references the child references the parent, then it becomes a friend note, and that comes to the side. So that becomes a lateral link, because they are both pointing at each other. And with that, you already get a very nice graph layout for your graph, your Obsidian graph. Yeah, so for example, here as well, you can see that, of course, here as well, I have lots of, so all my links here are mutual, because, or not mutual, but described. And I have a whole bunch of uncreated items here. This was my piece on looking for a good quick capture workflow. But yeah, so even if you just simply create your notes, you put Excalibrain on top of it, you will see all the empty notes that are just references, and you will see if it's mentioned multiple places, and it will be visualized, and you'll have your friends and your parents and children displayed as well.
There is a question here from Dutch Dragon Sir. Can Excalibrain also insert the notes as inline blocks? That would be a nice feature, I guess. Or maybe that should be something in Excalidraw, since it's more flexible. I got that idea from an app I came across called Heptabase.
Yeah, so that is, if I had more time, that is something absolutely. So here's what I'm. So there's a feature, and let me again bring up the Scratchpad here. So this is, let's see, I can actually delete everything from here. These elements are locked. That's also a nice feature. You can unlock them, but if they're locked, then it's part of the establishment. Anyway, I won't explain. But the point I want to explain is here. If I look for my Zettel custom folder, and I'll just drag an item here and drop it, then I can embed markdown documents into Excalidraw, and then I can also edit these links, and I can add, I have a section called the idea, if I manage to type it on every document. And so the way I created my Zettel custom template is to have this section where I summarize the idea. And the whole reason behind doing my template like this is my next step in working Excalibrain further is I want to offer an option that for the central note, you can set, you can configure that you will be able to bring in a section of the document in this markdown view. So then at least your central note will look like that. Do I want to create something like Heptabase with all the documents around? Maybe. I struggle to see the, so for me, the value of Excalibrain is that it provides me with a summary view of the context for my note. I will not be able to dive into the details of the notes. There's just simply no way for that. If I want to do that, I also had some examples in that recent video, for example, with the double bubble map. I can create a scratch pad. I can put multiple ideas here that I want to compare, and I can add some notes around it, and then I compare it. Yeah, because the other question I frequently get with Excalibrain is it would be great if I could extend this further down and to the side. I'm still not fully bought on the idea because it's already too busy for me this way. So if I build it further, I'm not sure it's useful. But that is, yeah, also potentially somewhere in the future. For sure, what I'm working on already and what will be one of the next features with Excalibrain is that here in the middle you will see, or you will have the opportunity to configure it to show this markdown insert view of the central idea. So this central piece is going to be slightly bigger, and then you get more information about it.
Okay, so I guess because Excalibrain is one of those plugins like Data View where you can quickly, at least this is my experience, it's like a black hole. You can keep going. There's just so much that you can do with it. I think it might be helpful to have tips for how to start. Like maybe that's why I was asking about not even setting relationships, maybe, because I think the first step would be to just use it out of the box.
Exactly. No. So one reason why it's hard to develop Excalibrain is every time I switch over to test something, I get lost. because you see the context and you start to navigate your world, because it brings you to another level of view. And of course, there are some things that you can see here that most of my titles are long and quite descriptive. And I find that important. So for me, every level of your work, the progressive summarization pyramid. And I think the title of the note is the top of the pyramid, and then you work down to the content. So I actually prefer descriptive titles, and this also comes, I guess, from my history with the brain. And with that, if these are the top level summaries, then immediately you see the context, and it's very hard not to start to navigate and look around. And as you do so, you will recognize that, hey, there's a connection, or I don't understand why that's connected, etc. And you start to work on your notes. And I guess this sort of tool is good if you like to garden in your vault. So if you like gardening your notes, then this is an excellent tool, because you get to navigate them and you get to improve them, update them.
So maybe a next step for it after out of the box might be to explore the default relationships. Like you said, start to add some of those relationships that are already that are already recognized by Excalibrain, things like parents and children, and then start to think of when you create a new note, because it's always hard to do it to existing notes, it's just a lot. But when you create a new note, maybe start to think about those relationships and how that will affect how it displays in Excalibrain. Then maybe after that, you could start getting into custom relationships. Like you said, I know you are a big proponent for the latch system, which is, what does it stand for? Location, alphabet, time, context, and hierarchy, right? Category and hierarchy. And hierarchy is the one that Excalibrain is strongest in, although I could really do some of the others too. But it is one of the ways, like you said, now you're looking at ontological relationships. It's not just parent or child. It's, does this explain the other thing? Is this an application, or is it the like permanent node or evergreen node or whatever it is in the system you're using? And I think the deepest one is having building the practice of exploring your vault regularly with it. I know one thing from my experience is that I was looking at my Excalibrain view for in the topic of observability for a video, and I saw monitoring there, and I saw that the way that I had things set up because of the default links, um, I had instrumentation under monitoring, and then it made me think like, should it be under it? Is it a sibling of it? How does that fit into observability? Should the observability be the parent? And it actually helped me understand a bit more about the concepts, like how to make sense of it in my brain. Because I feel like when you create a note, Obsidian doesn't already say, hey, you created this note that talks about some of the same things. How does it relate to it? But that is one of the ways that we can get meaning from our notes, by looking at them in conjunction with other notes and saying, do they agree? Do they disagree? Are they reinforcing each other? And that helps us be more critical, I'm finding. So that's what I'm actually using Excalibrain for. And I'd like to create opportunities to do that more.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I started to experiment with being more explicit about the ontology of my linking, and I find it to be extremely difficult. But in a way, it is difficult because apparently the thought is not clear in my head. So I think
Yeah.
it's like with this whole idea of writing your thoughts down. If you're not able to write it down, if you're not able to present it to someone else, then it's really not clear. You have this fuzzy feeling that you think you know it, but then you try to capture it, and it turns out that it's not really there. And for me, that's the same with articulating the relationship between two notes. That takes lots of mental effort, but I find that it pays off because I understand it more. And in the end, the idea is I'm always amazed at with this hype on productivity and frictionless workflows, etc. I think the point of personal knowledge management is not to be frictionless.
Yeah.
It's actually to think through stuff, and that takes effort. And I think if you have tools that slow you down, and you don't just copy paste and stuff, but you actually need to work through it, the end result is a deeper understanding, which I think is the whole objective. So and I think that's true with using, for example, Excalibrain as well.
I can't agree more. I think friction, at least purposeful friction, is the way that you actually get meaning from notes. It's the difference between just random disparate notes and a system. But we are actually over time. So just I thought as a fun thing to end with, this is the deserted island question. If you could only choose 3 plugins and you can't choose any of yours, which 3 community plugins would you choose to use? And you have to delete the others.
I have to delete the others. I just responded to Nick Milo's question on a similar one. So for me, data view and template are the two fundamentals, and then the rest.
Those are my first two.
The rest are niceties, but those two, I think I couldn't manage my vault without.
So what's the third?
The third, so there's many competing good plugins for the third. So so some maybe calendar, or actually I like the jump to date, or what's the name? Jump to date. There it is. A plugin by Chris, or the FT Hacker. That's one I use frequently. I very much like the Tag Wrangler, but I think that's because
No, now you're cheating. You have to delete the others.
no, but for the third place, there's many. And then the Markdown advanced tables is just a lifesaver. So,
Yeah.
so there are many competing for the third place, but the first two, no question, it's data view and templater. I think those are clearly the most valuable ones.
I agree. I also wrote down mine. I said data view, then templater. My third one is something that's very specific to my use cases. It's initiative tracker because I don't know how to run D&D without Obsidian. Quick question before we go, the last one. Where is the best place to learn all the features or how to use it for Excalidraw and Excalibrain? Plug-in landing page video walkthrough, YouTube channel, so many vids there and many outdated. Other places asking due to so many updates. I mean, I think Zolt's channel is the best. It is like the definitive place to look for information on these. Anything else that you would say, Zolt?
Yeah, so for sure, the issue is with the outdated videos. Yeah, so because I continually tinker with Excalidraw, things sort of get out of date. So it is a bit hard to get sort of a training like walkthrough. That's been on my mind to create a help that has 1 minute videos about specific features, but yeah, I think reality is that's not going to happen. So yeah, the best place are those videos, and yeah, hopefully the titles speak. Or if there's a question, you can always reach me on the channels I mentioned earlier, and I'll try to point you to a video that explains or answer.
Awesome. So thank you so much for joining me today. I was really excited. I've been actually wanting to ask you for a while, but when I asked you was just when I got up the courage to do it. So I'm happy that you said yes. I really use Excalidraw and Excalibrain very heavily. So it's always cool to see how you use it as the biggest power user for those tools. But thank you so much. And thank you everybody else for watching as well.
Yay. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.